What if the thing women feel first isn't your age? What if it isn't your salary, your status, or the silver in your hair? What if the most magnetic thing about an older man is something you can't post, can't flex, and can't fake for more than 5 minutes? Because there's a specific signal women notice almost instantly, not in what you say, but in what you need. You've felt this before too, even if nobody ever explained it to you clearly. Some people walk into a room carrying calm in their body, but hunger in their eyes. Hunger for validation, hunger for control, hunger to be admired, chosen, reassured. And then there are the rare people who walk into a room already emotionally settled within themselves. They're not there to take energy, they bring energy. That difference changes everything. And if you've ever wondered why some men become more attractive with age while others become more bitter, invisible, reactive, or exhausting to be around, stay with me, because this conversation goes deeper than dating advice. This is about presence. This is about nervous systems. This is about the psychological difference between men who age and men who mature. And before we go any further, if this topic already feels personal, comment below with the word steady. I read the comments closely because the men drawn to these conversations are usually not looking for tricks. They're looking for truth. And if you value emotionally intelligent conversations like this, subscribe and join this community, because very few spaces online are willing to talk honestly about attraction, masculinity, emotional regulation, and human psychology without turning everything into performance. I'm Maggie, host of Queen of Psychology YouTube channel, and today we're talking about 3 unusual Stoic traits that secretly make older men deeply magnetic to women. Not because they create manipulation, not because they turn men into cold statues, but because they change the emotional experience people have around you. The first trait is cultivated indifference. The second is deliberate silence. And the third is the trait that separates men who merely survive life from men who are transformed by it. Now, when I say cultivated indifference, I need you to hear this carefully. I am not talking about emotional coldness. Coldness is avoidance. Coldness is fear wearing armor. Cultivated indifference is something entirely different. It is emotional steadiness. Most people spend their lives unconsciously reacting to external conditions. Their mood changes with traffic, rejection, delayed messages, disrespect, criticism, uncertainty, attention, or lack of attention. Their emotional state is constantly negotiating with the outside world. But Stoic-minded men eventually learn something life-changing. If your peace depends on circumstances behaving correctly, your peace is fragile. And women feel fragility immediately. Not consciously necessarily. Most women won't sit there intellectually analyzing it. But the nervous system always notices. A man whose emotional state collapses every time life disappoints him creates tension in the room. A man who remains grounded under pressure creates relief. Think about 2 men sitting at dinner after a stressful day. One spends the entire evening complaining, the waiter is too slow, work was unfair, traffic was unbearable. His ex still bothers him. He's emotionally leaking frustration everywhere. The other man acknowledges difficulty without becoming consumed by it. He adapts. He stays present. He doesn't make everyone emotionally pay for his bad day. Which man feels safer to be around? That's the part many men miss. Attraction is not just visual, it's physiological. People move toward nervous systems that feel regulated. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago through what they called the dichotomy of control. Focus on what belongs to you, your actions, your reactions, your values, your character. Release obsession with what does not belong to you. Outcomes, opinions, validation, external chaos. And once a man truly internalizes that idea, something subtle but powerful happens. He stops chasing emotional control through other people. Now here's where this gets uncomfortable. A lot of men think they're calm, but they're only calm when they're getting what they want. Watch what happens when a woman pulls away slightly. Watch what happens when attention decreases. Watch what happens when they feel ignored, misunderstood, or unappreciated. Suddenly, the emotional steadiness disappears and neediness leaks out through irritation, over-explaining, passive aggression, or performance. That's not cultivated indifference. That's emotional dependence wearing confidence as a costume. Real steadiness means your identity does not collapse because reality stopped cooperating. And this is where women begin deeply trusting a man's presence, because she realizes, I don't have to manage his emotions for him. That feeling is rare. There's actually fascinating psychological research around emotional regulation and perceived attractiveness. Studies consistently show that emotional stability is associated with higher levels of trust, relational satisfaction, and long-term attraction. Why? Because unpredictable emotional volatility activates stress responses in other people. Calmness lowers threat perception. In simple language, calm people feel safer. Now let me give you a practical exercise, because philosophy only matters if it changes behavior. The next time something frustrates you, a rude comment, delayed text, canceled plan, criticism at work, Pause before reacting. Ask yourself one question. Am I trying to solve the situation or regulate my ego? That single question exposes almost everything, because many reactions are not about the actual problem. They're about wounded identity. And once a man notices that pattern, his entire presence changes. Now let's move into the second trait, deliberate silence. This one is incredibly misunderstood. Silence is not attractive because it's mysterious. Silence is attractive because it reveals self-trust. Younger men often feel pressure to constantly prove themselves socially. They overtalk, they overshare, they explain too much. They fill every silence because silence makes them anxious, but emotionally grounded men don't panic inside quiet moments. They listen fully, they observe, they think before speaking. And when they finally speak, people pay attention because their words carry intention instead of nervous energy. I once worked with a client who told me about a first date that completely changed how she viewed attraction. She said the man barely interrupted her the entire evening, not in a passive way, in an attentive way. He listened so deeply that she felt seen instead of managed. When he spoke slowly, directly, calmly. No performance, no constant attempts to impress her. And she said something fascinating afterward. She said, "For the first time in years, I felt like I could exhale around someone." That sentence matters, because many people are exhausted by conversational performance. Everyone is trying to appear intelligent, witty, successful, desirable, interesting. But emotionally mature presence often feels quieter than that. Seneca once said, "Speech is the mirror of the soul." And honestly, you can hear insecurity in speech patterns very quickly. You hear it in constant interruption, constant joking, constant explaining, constant qualification, constant need to dominate the emotional rhythm of the conversation. But deliberate silence communicates something powerful beneath the surface. I do not fear stillness. That energy changes social dynamics immediately. And before some men misunderstand this and turn silence into another performance strategy, let me clarify something very important. Deliberate silence is not pretending to be detached. Women can feel forced silence too. They can feel when a man is acting mysterious because he read it online. Real silence comes from internal sufficiency. You're not silent to manipulate attention. You're silent because you don't need constant reassurance through noise. Here's another practical exercise. In your next conversation, resist the urge to immediately fill pauses. Let the silence breathe for 2 extra seconds. Maintain relaxed eye contact. Observe your discomfort without rushing to escape it. Most people discover something surprising during this exercise. The urge to speak is often anxiety, not authenticity. And once you stop speaking from anxiety, your communication becomes cleaner, calmer, more persuasive, and more emotionally attractive. Now we arrive at the third trait. And this one goes deeper than most men expect. Embracing scars, not advertising pain, not turning trauma into identity, not performing vulnerability for sympathy. I mean something quieter than that. I mean no longer being ashamed of the fact that life touched you, because every older man carries invisible scars. Failed relationships, financial collapse, rejection, grief, betrayal, loneliness, regret, moments where he disappointed himself. Moments where reality shattered the image he had of his own life. And many men spend decades trying to hide those chapters because they believe scars reduce their value. But psychologically, integrated pain is often what creates depth. A man who has suffered honestly and metabolized it maturely feels radically different from a man desperately trying to appear untouched. Why? Because unprocessed pain creates bitterness. Processed pain creates wisdom, and women absolutely feel the difference. A bitter man turns every interaction into a hidden courtroom. Every woman becomes symbolic. Every disagreement becomes proof of betrayal. Every conversation quietly carries resentment beneath it. But a man who has integrated his scars doesn't need revenge against life anymore. That creates emotional safety. One of the most attractive qualities in mature masculinity is this: the ability to experience pain without becoming cruel because of it. Think about how rare that actually is. Many people become harder after suffering. More reactive, more cynical, more manipulative. But emotionally evolved men become softer without becoming weak, stronger without becoming controlling, wiser without becoming emotionally shut down. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That line is not motivational decoration. It is psychological transformation. Your heartbreak teaches emotional restraint. Your failures teach humility. Your losses teach perspective. Your disappointments teach compassion. And when a man stops hiding his scars, something powerful happens internally. He no longer feels like he must constantly perform perfection to deserve connection. That changes his entire nervous system. Now, I want you to sit with a difficult question for a moment. If you remove the need to appear impressive, Who would you actually be? Not your status, not your achievements, not your social identity, not your image, your actual presence. That question unsettles many men because some realize they've spent years performing competence while secretly starving for validation underneath it all. But the men who face that realization honestly become different. They stop negotiating for approval. They stop chasing emotional payment from women. They stop using charm to soothe insecurity. They stop turning attraction into emotional survival. And ironically, that's when they become magnetic. Because here is the deepest truth in this entire conversation. Women are rarely responding only to what a man looks like. They are responding to how his presence feels. Does he feel emotionally expensive? Emotionally demanding? Emotionally unpredictable? Or does he feel grounded, calm, emotionally integrated, and internally secure? That distinction changes everything. When you combine cultivated indifference, deliberate silence, and embracing scars, you create something rare, a man whose calm is earned. Not fake calm, not performative calm, earned calm. The kind forged through disappointment, self-awareness, emotional discipline, and deep reflection. And people feel that before you even speak. That's why truly magnetic older men rarely look like they're trying to attract anyone. They're not reaching outward desperately for validation anymore. They've already built internal steadiness first. And here's the final perspective shift I want to leave you with tonight. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion. It's about no longer becoming enslaved by it. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Because the most powerful men are not the loudest men in the room. They are the men whose emotional state cannot easily be purchased, manipulated, or destabilized by external chaos. And when a woman feels that kind of grounded presence, her nervous system relaxes. Not because he's perfect, not because he's dominant, not because he's pretending to be untouchable, but because he feels emotionally safe in a world full of emotional noise. If this conversation resonated with you, comment the phrase "earned calm" below. I genuinely want to know which of these 3 traits hit you the hardest. And if you know a man who needs this message, maybe a father, brother, son, friend, or even yourself 5 years ago, share this video with him. Sometimes one psychological insight can completely change the way a person moves through the world. And if you stayed all the way to the end, remember this. You do not become magnetic by demanding attention. You become magnetic by removing the desperation beneath the demand. Once that disappears, your presence begins speaking for itself.